Hello, it's Jennie and Laurie of Astropath, which is a combination of astrolore and hidden path astrology. Now, today we're here to talk about the Taurus full moon eclipse that happens on November 8th at 6:06 a.m.?
You're pretty close. 6:02.
6:02 a.m. in Eastern time. And yeah, this is a big deal. I read somewhere that this is the first eclipse that's happened in our country on an election day.
Oh, interesting. Ooh la
So
la.
that is interesting. But yeah, it's an extremely important and powerful eclipse that we're going to be talking about. Before we get into that conversation, please subscribe to our channel. Find us both out there, our websites, our social media, and like this video and share it with your friends.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, without further ado, what are we talking about? What's an eclipse? What are we looking at here, Jennie?
Well, our last video we made about the new moon was a solar eclipse. And so 2 weeks later, we are here at the lunar eclipse that's happening. So the lunar eclipse is when the Earth shadow is cast on that moon. So the sun is shining on the Earth, and then the shadow falls on the moon. So the moon appears to disappear, and then it kind of comes back with this reddish hue for a while. And this is a total lunar eclipse, and I think it's the only total eclipse for a couple more years, so you should get out and look at this one. I think the eclipse itself is at 5:59 a.m. and then 4 minutes later or 3 minutes later it's the full moon. But it will be visible in the United States
as long as you get up early enough.
Yeah, have to get your butt out of bed.
Yeah.
But a lunar eclipse always happens at the full moon, right? So I guess we should talk a little bit about our full moon.
Yeah, about the cycle itself. I mean, every 28 days we start a new cycle at a new moon. A new moon is when the sun and the moon are aligned, so we can't see either one. Those are the nights that it's very, very dark out. That's the new moon. Now we think of the cycle as akin to the plant cycle, the new moon being when you plant the seed. And then every day from there on, the moon grows a little bit. We come a week after the new moon, we come to the first quarter moon. And then a week after that, we come to the full moon, which is the full illumination of the pathway for this particular cycle. A week later, we come to the third quarter and then back to the next new moon. That's a simple little way to think about it.
Nice. Excellent.
And then the eclipses are kind of wild cards in there because they do happen when everything's perfectly aligned. And you'll see, if you see a chart of it, you see that the nodal axis is hooked right in with the full and new moon at the eclipse. That's how you can tell by looking at a chart whether we're at an eclipse.
Yeah, and eclipses are interesting because they add different meanings to our normal new moon and full moon. And you can still think about this as the illumination phase where something's coming to light based on a seed that you planted either 2 weeks or 6 months ago. But with the eclipse, it's not a full illumination. Like, you're not seeing the normal light, but you are seeing a different light. So on one hand, it sort of shows you things that you can't see in the normal light of day. So it kind of brings up things that, especially in Scorpio season, that are normally kind of hidden and occluded. And it's an opportunity to look at those things, like what is hidden, what is occluded. So it kind of gives you that. And at the same time, I also like to think about it as, again, that idea of closing, like closing one door to open another. I guess in the simplest terms, I would just think of an eclipse as a pivot point. Yeah. And because they come in these cycles, that it'll be a longer 6-month period that has an impact.
Yeah, and I think of them as kind of wild cards, that things that happen right at the eclipse have a longer duration of impact than what you would see from a regular new moon or full moon. But this, just to give some dates here, this full moon eclipse is tied into the new moon that happened on October 25th.
Mhm.
And then previously, the Taurus new moon that happened on April 30th of this year. That was the Taurus new moon, of which this is the full moon attached to that
Nice.
cycle.
That's
Right.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are pretty useful dates. So think back to what was going on in your life then, because both of those were
Yeah.
eclipses too. So it was a solar eclipse
Right.
back there in April, and it was a solar eclipse in Scorpio. So we're still working within those eclipse designations of this kind of occlusion or shadow that's happening.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you can identify things that were happening right around the very end of April, you might really see that this is you have a real new ability to see this from a different perspective
Hmm.
from what
Yeah.
was going on at that time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And these eclipses have been going on in Taurus and Scorpio for the past like sort of year and a half or so. So like just this is bringing a theme over and over again up in your chart. I mean, it's a specific set of themes, and that's why we wanted to make a video about this particular one, because it's, and also, I mean, this one is happening right on the midterm elections of the United States, which is a big deal in this country because we're poised in a very dangerous precipice where there's a lot of forces and really intense emotions that are embroiled in this. And also, this is a Taurus full moon. We're working with issues of Taurus, and Taurus deals a lot with our resources and our physical body and also the body of the earth.
Yeah.
So it's really bringing those things into focus, and tied in with the idea of resources is the idea of security. Like our resources are what make us feel safe and secure and well fed and well housed and comfortable emotionally. So those are the things that we're seeing. And gosh, I could certainly say that those things are fully in view here in the United States right at this moment for the election.
Yeah, all of those things. So
Mhm.
what do you have a way of simply speaking to what you would think of as the theme between these two, Scorpio and Taurus?
I mean, I think a lot of it's with Taurus, it's connecting to the wisdom of the body. And how does Scorpio fit into that? Well,
Right.
Scorpio deals with those deep emotions, and the body houses those emotions.
Okay.
Your emotions occur in your physical body. And when you can trust the wisdom of the body, you can have a better understanding of your own emotional content.
And you can manage that intensity of Scorpio, right?
Yeah. Is that how you think of it, Laurie?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. I just,
Mhm.
you think about the intense depth of Scorpio. Scorpio
Mm.
wants to dig down and understand. I think of
Mhm.
Scorpio as really wanting to control things through understanding what is underneath the
Mhm.
bedrock of that. And
Yeah.
Taurus, there's a with Taurus, it's so much about, the wisdom of the body, the trusting of simplicity.
Mm.
These two, they're in polarity to each other, and they kind of have a lot to teach each other.
Yeah. And they work, I mean, they're both
Yeah.
yin signs. So
Right.
they're earth and water. So they're referring to these more inward processes and the more kind of quiet, hidden processes that are not
Yeah.
sort of out there in the world, really obviously. And so, I mean, that's something that they have in common. But they definitely work together. And I really like your idea of bringing in Taurus as a simplicity, because it does bring you back to that simplicity. And that's what I think we're going to talk about when we get to the individual
Right.
impacts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want
And
to look at the chart or?
let's look at the chart, because there's some
Okay.
complexities besides just the
Oh my.
the
Yeah,
sun and
there's a
moon
lot
here.
going on in this
There
this
is a
lunar
lot.
eclipse.
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard to keep it simple for us, I'll tell you that, because there's so
Right.
many different things.
And we're going to do our best to keep it simple, but it's hard to see it as simple when we can see very
Yeah.
quickly that there's a gathering here and there's a gathering here. And that the full moon brings in that opposition between those two groups. So you can't really look at this eclipse without paying attention to, first and foremost, I mean, quite honestly, Mercury and Venus are always close to the sun. So it's not a surprise to see those three grouped together. They very often are. We'll mention a little more about Venus here though as well. But what's really glaring is the moon is at 16 degrees. Uranus is at 16 degrees. What is Uranus about? Uranus is, we think of it as the awakener. It shows us what we need to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
See,
think
it's
of
like the
Ura-
electrical socket.
Right, exactly. You put
Yeah.
your fingers in a light socket and everything changes in a heartbeat. That is the kind of energy that Uranus always brings. You see something, you can't unsee it.
Mhm.
You can look
Yeah.
away, but you're going to always know that you saw it, right? So that's the energy of Uranus, and that energy is so tied in here. And we also can't look at it without noticing that Saturn is also playing into a T-square. The Saturn and Uranus square has been going on for almost 2 years now. This is a long-term connection that this eclipse is highlighting. I have spent a lot of time talking about and thinking about that Saturn Uranus square as being so tied into the vitriol in our politics, in the social discourse that you said earlier. I loved what you said when we were first talking about children in a sandbox throwing sand at each other. And it's such a interesting thing because in this country there's so much sand being thrown.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of different issues bouncing around, but essentially, I think things can be boiled down to two things, which is the use of resources and the desire for security. And those are both two things we can associate with Taurus, because Taurus is that solid earth. The earth provides, the earth is how we get our food. And then also how you are housed and clothed and so on leads right into your security. So you see a lot of especially in the Republican camp talking a lot about crime. You see a lot of that going on, and then there's the environmental issues that are more visible in some of the so-called other side. I mean, this is the polarization. Oh, you do this and I do that, right? And this face off. But I think what this chart is asking us to see is there's things to see way beyond just the polarity of us versus you, or whatever. I mean, pointing a finger and kind of having these two just different sides. I mean, the thing that's being missed. So as the kids are playing in the sandbox and throwing sand in each other's faces, what's being missed is that sandbox is sliding towards a cliff, and we're all in that sandbox together. And that's what's constantly being missed. And the other reason I like the sandbox analogy is because right now this chart shows us one of the ways through, because it's a T-square, is to look to what's missing. And what is the missing leg in this chart is Leo. And what does Leo want us to do? Leo is all about having fun and playing together and being generous with one another. So there's a very clear, in a simple sense, message around, stop throwing sand and notice what's actually happening to the whole thing together. And then talk to your neighbor in the sandbox and, just be more generous with one another and think about that instead of
You might be able
another.
to get out of the sandbox if you stop throwing sand.
Yes. But I do, yeah, it does seem like that, doesn't it?
Yeah. There's so much. I've been talking a lot, like in my blog today and stuff, just about the importance of listening to each other. And I feel like I've been saying that for so long, but I feel like it's so much easier to say it than to do it. I mean, and even when we do listen, are we really hearing? How much are we really paying attention? Or are we just, listening because we know we have to, but we're still just trying in our own head.
Right.
But really understanding that everyone, no matter how much you might want to throw sand at them because they think wrong in your view, if you actually listen to them, they've got reasons for how they think the way they do.
And a lot of my observation is that, you know, if you think about it's this, as I articulated a minute ago, like this kind of, there's resources and security. Well, those ultimately are the same thing. And that's what's happening, is that everybody agrees there's problems. Everybody agrees that there's something major happening, that we're at a major shift point, that
Right.
things are not the way they used to be, you know. And what is different is then the story about, well, how to change that, or where it comes from, or whose fault it is, or, you know, those are the stories that are different, but the underlying feeling, which is ironically what we're talking about with Taurus, the feelings in the body, like
Right.
getting in touch with the simplicity of what your body is telling you. That is in a large part is what's happening here. That's what there is. If you dig down deep enough, which is the Scorpio piece, there is definitely an agreement about the point we're in. There's just a lot of disagreement about all the trappings and how to, what to do about it. And as I said, and it's
And then
extra difficult.
there are the
Well,
powers that be that really gain a great deal from us throwing sand at each other.
yeah, that's absolutely a true statement.
Yeah.
The other thing I just want to mention is that it is Scorpio season, so we're already dealing with the hidden depths of Scorpio, but Mercury and Venus are also hidden underneath the beams of the sun, because they're so close to the sun that you can see neither Venus nor Mercury in the visible sky right now. And on top of that, you have, it's an eclipse. So I mean, this is very hidden stuff. This is not easy to dig at, you know, and get to the truth of it. Is, and like you said, Lord, it's easy to talk about it. Whole different thing for all of us to put into practice, including ourselves. So
Yep,
yeah.
absolutely. Okay. You know, this is very complicated stuff, and we could talk and talk and talk about it. But are we ready to move into the personal?
Yeah, I think we should. I think we've covered this pretty
Okay.
well. I mean,
Okay.
for our
So
purposes.
let's see how this is going to impact different individuals. And, you know, before we get into that, let's also just say that if you have planets in the mid degrees of any of the fixed signs, this is going to be particularly relevant to you, particularly if you have planets in the mid degrees of Scorpio or Taurus, but also Leo and Aquarius as well. So think about that. Look at your chart. What do you got for personal planets in those mid degrees of the fixed signs? Okay, now I'm going to open this up and we're going to think about personal impact. Now, if you've got Aries rising, this new moon itself is falling right here in your second house. So how are we going to think about this polarity, the polarity between the second and the eighth house? There's a great deal of intensity coming into your life from the eighth house, other people's deep values that may be very unlike your own. So that's the place to start, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the moon here, so it's sort of being eclipsed, but you really need to focus on this area. How are we going to do that, Jennie?
Well, this area, the second house there, is all about self-worth. And so the connection between other people's values and the intensity of that coming in, it's sort of like there's a price to pay in how you view yourself. So I was thinking about this in terms of having an intense interaction with somebody you don't agree with. And then that comes out some way in your own self-esteem, either I mean, usually I think of it as like not feeling good about yourself, like, oh God, I'm so dumb. Why did I say that? Or why can't I, you know, stand up for myself better, or those kinds of like things that are kind of irksome that you just, I don't know, that's what I was thinking coming into that self-esteem. And I just think that because it's an eclipse, it might be something that you haven't really been that aware of that you do.
Right.
And it's time to tune into it. And the way we do that is, one of the ways is through your physical body. So just dropping into your body and seeing what comes to light after these intense interactions.
And, you know, one of the things I would pay attention to as well, because yes, that second house is about self-worth, self-value. It's also, you know, money and resources play a large role here. If you notice yourself unconsciously spending too much money here at this eclipse, this is something that you're going to really want to pay attention to. Forget that and just go out in the woods and take a walk.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm glad you brought that up, Lori, because yeah, there's a big theme around resources. And so this
Yeah,
is like, getting in the argument and then driving away all pissed off in a screech of tires and burning some gas. Okay. Right.
right,
I
right.
mean, it does bring that up.
And then immediately going and spending money to make yourself feel better. But,
Yeah.
you're shooting yourself in the foot by doing that. Instead, leave that interaction, go take a long, slow walk or take a nap, somehow center into your own body and the wisdom of your own body to be able to manage how to grapple with other people who think very
Mhm.
differently than you do, because that's a lot
Yeah.
of what the theme of this is going to be for you, is about
Mhm.
how you hold your own values steady in the face of the intensity of someone else's.
Yes, and the final piece that we're thinking too is connecting with somebody who makes you feel good about yourself. If you've had those things, like that's another really great. So go on that walk in the woods with somebody that you just treasure, who really sees you and supports you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
cool.
Then let's move to those of you with Taurus rising. So this gets into a very personal area of your life, because that eclipse is happening in your first house. The sun is in your the seventh house being the area of one-on-one kind of equal partnerships. So what's the intensity coming from the other that yeah, where's that? Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, so anyone with a Taurus rising, like you've probably been feeling this for a while, right? Because of being in
Yeah.
the eclipse. So this axis, this question between yourself and other, and these important partnerships to you, be they your marriage or one-on-one connections through businesses or other sources, like even a therapist relationship could fit into this category. But it's something that's coming across in that polarity. It's been activated for a while. And it could play across with the eclipse. We were talking about this coming out as like a distortion of your self-image, of maybe having
Uh-huh.
some kind of
Huh.
misunderstanding about how you come off to other people. And you will never know 100% of the truth of how other people see you, but it might be very possible that you have a distorted self-image that's coming into play here. So you have that argument, and somehow it's infiltrating you in a way that isn't quite right. Wouldn't you say something like
Yeah, well,
that?
it's interesting because with Taurus, we always want to think about that whole issue of simplicity. Taurus
Mm,
loves simplicity and needs simplicity. So if you're in a
mm,
big argument with somebody and they're like digging up all this dredging stuff, and you're thinking, it kind of leaves you feeling scattered. Yeah,
mm,
coming back to the simple wisdom of your body. Lay down, put your hands on your heart, and connect with
mm,
the simplicity of your own self understanding.
mm.
Again, go for a walk in the woods or take a nap. I think I think we all need walks in the woods and naps during this eclipse. But, the other thing that I've been thinking about with Taurus is that ability to see through pretense,
Mhm.
to find that level of simplicity.
Oh
The
yeah.
simplicity
Mhm.
and the connection of the body is going to really teach you a lot of how to deal with that intensity that's coming to you from others or another.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think so much about it's a kind of somewhat of an awkward language, but thinking about your relationship to self. And it is like almost thinking of yourself as another person. And this Taurus
Mm.
brings in the idea of having a reverence for your body,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yourself, and looking at that as its own relationship. And it's not it's a little bit of a foreign concept, but one that's coming into play more and more, I think. But yeah,
So if,
that's, yeah.
in thinking about the eclipses being these wild cards that bring huge change, the change itself, you want to focus on the change of your relationship to self,
Mhm.
bringing more simplicity to your understanding of yourself and understanding
Mhm.
yourself as a physical being.
Mm,
Yeah.
nice. Hmm. I think that's great.
Okay. Let's
Good.
move on then to those of you with Gemini rising. This is going to bring the eclipse. The full moon eclipse is in your 12th house, with the sun there opposite it in the 6th. So the 12th house, what is the 12th house about? It is really about all that hidden unconscious information that you hold. With the full moon, the intensity is coming maybe from health. How
Mhm.
are you thinking about this, Jenny?
Yeah, well, I think that a 12th house can be seen too as your understanding of your connection to
Oh,
the
yeah.
collective for I don't know, and I guess a sense of divinity, or your sense of spirituality, or whatever it is that connects you to the much larger picture than just you and your individual life. And so I think that there's a tendency among us humans to suffer and then feel like we're all alone with our suffering and that
Oh,
nobody else
yeah.
can understand because we're completely alone and isolated. And the irony, of course, is that everybody feels that. So
Right.
it's almost like when you have that, there's some kind of misunderstanding around feeling completely isolated and alone, and it's all just you. And what you need to do to work with that is get into your body in a different way, so that you recognize that that's
Ah,
not a true story. So
I
something
like
like that.
Well, I like that because it also brings in the same idea that I've been thinking about this, the ability to see through pretense, to
Mm.
see what,
Oh yeah.
yeah, to see the reality of that connection and the simplicity of that connection, really.
Hmm. Yeah.
And the yeah, the simplicity of finding that connection through your own human body,
Hmm.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So,
Yeah,
and
and also, yeah. No,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
You
I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say, you're making me lean into just the sixth and the 12th house do refer to our health, and they refer to our physical health and our mental health. And also, I would say our emotional and perhaps even our spiritual health, which is
Right.
exactly these
Absolutely.
understandings.
Yes.
And so as that then in intensity comes from Scorpio, which can come from your routines. It might come out of like ridiculous frustration from like playing a game with somebody, like a sports game, and you're really mad, and like
Right.
having an understanding of what that is. Or it also can be your practices, or sorry, your routines to do with work. So that like
Mhm.
get up, get ready, pack your lunch, go to work, that whole routine or work things that can come up and be really intensely annoying and be just triggering you.
Yeah.
And then it's getting into that calm down through the physical body and recognize that that kind of body is temple idea.
Right. Right.
So
That's so interesting. So yeah, and thinking about the eclipses as times of dramatic change, potential, big change. The change here would be in that area of your understanding of your spiritual connection to others.
yeah, and you don't have to do this. I mean, this might mean connecting with other people who you share a similar spirituality to. I mean, I think in the 12th house, it's going to refer to something to do with taking at least a tiny bit of retreat, even if that's just a few deep breaths. But I think there's that work with that, but then that you can connect with other people who you share those views with, and that as a support. I think that would be something that could help too.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. Okay,
cool.
well, let's move on to those of you with Cancer rising. So that puts the full moon eclipse in your 11th house. So the focus here is on community.
That's right. Hmm.
So, yeah, let's think about this. The intensity yeah, I love this polarity. This polarity to me is so much about, the area here where we give of ourselves and the area here of where we allow ourselves to be supported. So there's
Hmm.
some real intensity here in how we give of ourselves, and yet we really need to find this simplicity of allowing others to support us.
Hmm. Yeah, so that intensity could be coming from a challenging creative project that you're in, something to do with that. Or it also could be intense relationships with your children if you have
Right.
children. something that's really intense and possibly upsetting, and bringing in, just raising some of those issues. And then it's kind of reflecting back into, okay, well, how do you connect with other people then? I mean, if you're at home raising children and that's the issue, then there's something about, okay, maybe you just feel disconnected from your community. And there's something about, like, you just feel like, oh, I just don't fit in anymore because I'm doing this other thing. And the eclipse is asking you to go, nope, not so, but to look at your physical body and how you connect with other people. Like, it could be your groups of friends, or a community. So I think this is something about getting in your body and doing something physical with community.
With
So get,
community.
yeah, like go
Yeah.
on a big group hike, it's
Yeah.
something like
Yeah,
that where you have that.
something that engages you in a simple activity with your body. Not
Yeah.
some, this isn't about engaging with a big political community to fight about, this is something, yeah, like you said, go on a big bike ride with a whole bunch of people that are kind of like-minded. Find some outlet there. I'm going to, for 1 minute, Jenny, I'm going to stop this share and I'm going to pause us. Okay, so we're back on this. We just finished Cancer rising and we're going on to Leo rising. So for those of you with Leo rising, this full moon eclipse is happening in your 10th house. So the wild card is really how you show up in the world, how you, what's happening with your career is the first place to look here, right, Jenny?
Yeah, absolutely. This is maybe something that's coming up in your workplace that you're just not, I don't know, it's a way that maybe you're not being able to be present to your work, that you're not grounded in your body at work, is what the suggestion is. That is just kind of like looking at something that is kind of impeding your ability to progress, to progress at work. And it's coming from some sort of intensity to do with your roots, your home life. It might be an upsetting issue at home. It might be just simply a way that you don't feel like you're not really understanding your own roots, like the intensity at your roots. Right. So it could be a personality thing, or it could be more of an external, your family life is driving you nuts, right. And somehow it's impacting your work and it's affecting your ability. That's kind of what I was thinking. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. I was thinking about, the whole idea again of the kind of the ability to see through pretense in the area of Taurus and the need to develop simplicity there. So with the eclipse being such a wild card of potential big change over the coming months, what is it from your roots, from your core, from your family home life that is pushing you to make a big change in your career? What could that be? What is the complexity in your home that kind of demands that you find a more simplistic expression out in the world? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I
How
think,
you look at it?
yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, if you have any significant planets in those mid degrees of Scorpio or Taurus, particularly in those two houses, you can expect over the coming months for there to be some big shifts and changes in the area of career and possibly home, family as well.
I think it's also important to look at your use of your body in your work. I mean, if you have a physical job, that could be literally needing to look at how you're operating, how you're looking at your physical health and so on. But if you're not, like maybe you're sitting at a computer desk all the time, maybe it is something about needing to move your body a bit more. But it also has to do with your resources at work. And so I think it's really important to connect with colleagues and to connect with people in your profession to help you really awaken in this area, because I think that that's something that's being asked. Like, you're not just resting on your on your laurels here. Like, this is a time for growth and empowered action. And so in order to understand more about what that is, I think it requires sharing resources with colleagues at work and looking at these different things that you need to in your workplace.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting, because Uranus is right there with the moon here at this
Mhm.
eclipse. That is your 10th house. Your career path is a place of great awakening.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that great awakening comes through your body, through developing simplicity and connection and an understanding of physicality or of
Mhm.
nature. Yeah.
Mhm.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Anything else about that?
I think we've hit on the main topics, so let's move on to Virgo, huh?
All right. If
Yeah.
you've got Virgo rising, this is occurring in your 9th house. So what it is that the full moon eclipse is really around your worldview, and that can be so many things. I love the 9th house. The whole idea of worldview encompasses everything from all the ways that you develop your worldview: education, travel, higher understandings of all sorts, understanding other cultures. There's so much that kind of holds that 9th house space, but there's a real awakening to bringing body wisdom into your awareness of your worldview. What do you think, Jenny?
Yeah, no, I think you just said it. That's exactly what I was thinking about. This is where you literally embody your points of views, and there's a lot of ways that your body can connect with this.
Mm.
I think that to have, I mean, one is asking yourself, are you sort of pontificating? Is there a way in which you're disconnected from your body and that you are kind of
Mm.
throwing your opinion around? And by doing that, you're not really thinking critically. You're actually you're out of your body and you're in a more of a, I would say, like an ego space. On the other hand, if you can tap into the resource of your body, that means you can kind of stand tall. You can feel your heart is open, like you sort of have an open heart center. And that's going to allow you to really come from that critical thinking place where you're thinking for yourself, but you're also including other people's points of views and you're also able to be open minded. So something about all of those, but it's absolutely about body wisdom, I
Yeah,
think.
and it
Yeah.
makes me think, as you're saying that, it makes me think of the whole idea of we've got a brain here and we've got a brain in our gut, right?
Hmm.
And it's
Yep.
that thinking through the gut. With Taurus in that 9th house, our worldview, for those of you with Virgo rising, your worldview is so connected to your body and waking
Hmm.
up to that connection. This could
Hmm.
very well indicate, maybe you've been really off kilter and your worldview has not been in alignment with your body wisdom.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
this is the time to really allow that shift. That shift is happening. So
Yeah.
this eclipse is really pointing to, I think, over the long term here of the eclipse is, there's an awakening to a new understanding, a new
Hmm.
worldview that is more in line with your body wisdom.
Yeah.
And where has it come
Yeah.
from? It's come from some
Hmm.
really deep, intense conversations.
Yeah. And it's come from places that you may feel just the intensity of walking down the street and maybe seeing like political signs you don't agree with, or, that your neighbor has some annoying habits that you're just like, oh man, and it's triggering you and bringing up old stuff, and it's like, well, what's that tying into? This is how it ties into how you need to kind of have open heart, open mind in order to kind of move through your world and just trusting those instincts in your body. I mean, I think overall, this is a huge time of having a more of a relationship with our bodies, and by default, the body of Earth. So, getting out and walking in the woods, as we always like to say, is the solution for everything because it is.
At this eclipse, it
But
definitely is. And yeah, if you've got
yeah,
Virgo rising, the awakening, the what's happening is in the area of your worldview. So yeah, if your worldview is changing, allow it to change, I would say. If it's connecting you to your body wisdom, allow that change. You know, we get so attached to our opinions that it oftentimes can be very difficult to allow those opinions and ideas to change. And I think we all have to be thinking about that. Okay. Anything else?
No, I think that's pretty good.
Okay. Next one, we're going to go to those of you with Libra rising. How are you thinking about this one, Jennie? I'm going to turn it right to you.
Libra rising. Let's see. Well, the eclipse is falling in your 8th house of other people's values and stuff. I always think it's always the stuff you bump up against. It's the,
Baggage.
Yeah, I mean, I think of this as like, it's like the iceberg. You can see the top, but oops, you just bumped into the huge bottom part of the iceberg. So it is a little bit like that. And it has to do with the intensity that's coming to do with, it's either our self-worth and our self-esteem, or it could be issues like financial issues coming from that 2nd house where all the Scorpio is. And it's somehow making you just be out of touch with your body, because really what you need to do with other people's stuff and intensity is, you need to have boundaries so that you are able to both be present there for people as needed, but that you're also able to kind of hold your own sanctity of self to a degree. Like you're able to have that boundary. Now, I always think with boundaries that they're not walls. They're movable, and you have to be able to set them, and your body can tell you which boundaries you need to set. If you are anchored enough in your body, you know when it's time to take a step back from a conversation or a step back from a relationship. And part of it is that.
Right. So yeah, that it's interesting, in thinking about the eclipse as that kind of wild card, that pivot point for big change. The change here is in how you navigate other people's stuff, and boundaries is how you work with yourself in that navigation. It's exactly what it is. So yeah, really, this is a time to really be paying attention to what your boundaries are, if they are sufficient for what you need. If they reflect your own values. That 2nd house, the intensity of your own values, has to really feed that ability to navigate other people's.
Yeah. And I just think Libra rising people, they're such relational people. I mean, a huge part of your purpose is about relating to other people, right? And so it's extra important for you to be able to have some separation and to understand, like, whoa, okay, wait a minute, my body's giving me a red alert here. It's time to step back. It's time to just take a break, and doing that is going to help you a lot, I think.
And one thing I wonder, for some reason, as I'm looking at this and thinking about it, I wonder how much for some of you, this might be around really waking up to, with Uranus being part of this, so closely attached, how much of it might be really around waking up to other people's stuff that's so different than your own. Maybe you didn't understand how different your own values were, how kind of divergent your paths have gone from other people in your life. This might be a real time of waking up to that and learning to kind of hold that with a level of simplicity too in your boundaries. Does that make sense how I said that?
Yeah. I mean, Taurus is helping you simplify. This is a very complicated area of life. And so the more you can like keep to that simplicity and that body wisdom, the more able you're going to be able to gain this skill throughout your life, which is a lifelong pursuit for sure.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think,
okay. Well, in that case, let's go on to those of you who have Scorpio rising, and this is going to put that full moon eclipse right in your 7th house. What's happening in your relationship? You're going to really want to be looking at bringing that level of simplicity that we've been talking about into your interactions with a partner or, a business partner, an intimate partner. Equal partnerships is really what that seventh house is about. So that's kind of the area of more long-term change from coming out of this eclipse.
Yeah. And it's gosh, anybody with Scorpio rising right now, there's just so much intensity in that first house for you of self. And also there's a lot of indications about just having to confront like regressive behaviors or this a thing with Scorpio where you kind of have this oh, I have a wound, I've got to walk around with this wound is a wounded thing that can happen with Scorpio. And I imagine that whatever that's about, if you are dealing with that, it's coming up right now because it's being triggered by so much Scorpio. And so I think there's a tendency to feel that way. And that the way through here is to be in those relationships, to be available. When you're in your wounded space, you're not available for your partners in life, like whether they're your intimate partner or your business partner, so on. There's a way that your energy is being consumed. So this is asking you to recalibrate. And how do you do that? By having physical interactions with your partners. So if that's your marriage partner, that could definitely be sensual sexual things where you're reconnecting. If it's more of a business partner, it's like, well, do something with your body with that business partner, like go out on that walk, because get out where you're moving your bodies and get out of the normal space that you do business in. And that's really what you're going to need to do at this time, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, you can anticipate, especially if you have planets in the mid degrees of Scorpio or Taurus, you can anticipate some big changes in that area of intimate relationships and the relationship to yourself. And what you're really seeking here is that level of waking up to the body connection, the simplicity. Relationship for people with Scorpio rising, relationship itself can be a source of real beauty and simplicity. There's so much complexity in your personality with that Scorpio rising, but you can develop a relationship with someone who really can settle you into a space of a lot more beauty and simplicity.
Nice. Well said.
All right. So let's go on to those of you with Sagittarius rising. This is going to put the full moon eclipse right there in your sixth house of your day-to-day routines, how you live your life. So where are you finding simplicity there or connection to your body there? How are you thinking about this one, Jennie?
Well, I just keep going with the sixth house. It's like right into physical activities in the sixth house, things that get you really connected to your body. Things like yoga come to mind, Zumba, dance, like the things that are really getting you in touch with movement, because you're looking at here the exercise that your body requires to keep it in stasis, to keep it balanced, to keep equilibrium. So you're going to want to choose activities that not only get you in touch with your body, but that you share space with other people doing the same thing so that you can feel more connected. Because what you're trying to deal with is all that intensity of the 12th house. And the 12th house can be so much about feeling isolated and feeling alone and feeling all by yourself. And those are existential things that happen, and that's fine. But the way to deal with it is to just get into your physical body in those practices, those routines, and make sure you get out every day and connect with the earth as well. So out on that walk.
And with that sixth house also, I want to bring in, aside from the exercise and all that physicality side of it, there's also, all the ways that you day to day on a routine level support your body, such as your health care routines, your dietary routines as well. And even we could say your relationships with your pets, right? But, you know, given that this is an eclipse and we can expect a great deal of change coming out of this point of this eclipse, where you're going to see the change, where you're going to really look for the change is in the development of healthier physical routines.
Yeah.
Sixth
Great.
house. All right. So now we're going to move on to those of you with Capricorn rising, and this is putting the full moon eclipse in your 5th house. The 5th house is the area of how you give of yourself. You can think of it as your creative expression. That's a big one. That 5th house is about your creative expression, how you give to your creative path, how you give to children. If you have children, this can be part of that, or just, you know, kind of more casual love affairs, not serious relationship, but just how you give of yourself freely. It can also be an area of playfulness. And with Taurus there, what you're seeking is connection through physicality.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in the simplest possible way, this is just finding joy. You know, it's that real release of joy. So the way to work with the material here that's coming up from you is to connect with people through that sense of joy. So that's just unbridled playfulness. Maybe it's taking some fun risks together, playing some games. But that's kind of what you want to work with to get back in touch with that. Just pure joyful expression. And the reason you might not be feeling that so easily is just so much intensity in your community. All the Scorpio stuff, bringing up issues for you in terms of group stuff, other people's like stuff coming up in these groups, and you're like, oh, okay, or community issues that could just feel like a lot. And the answer is to just kind of connect with people through those joyful spaces. Kind of
connect with your creativity, bringing really connecting through creativity with others, with your physicality. And there's probably a lot of intensity coming from whatever you call your community.
Yeah, I mean, and we're talking a lot about this eclipse too, is like that, a place of awakening. And in this case, it's really, what are the gifts of the body? You know, what's the body wisdom that allows you just to do this and lift above those more intense issues. So
and how you can use that physical energy, that reverence of physicality, how you can use that as a creative expression. So look for that in terms of the big shifts and changes coming from this eclipse. Okay. So now we're going to move on to those of you with Aquarius rising. This is putting the eclipse, this full moon eclipse, in your 4th house. So what's going on with family and home? What's the big shift and change there? What is it you need to awaken and really understand how to bring yourself, your physicality, and your steady focus into that area of home?
Yeah, and this is very much that work-home balance, right? And with Aquarius rising, there's a suggestion around there just being a lot of stuff in your work life, like a lot of just dealing with just some intense, possibly emotional issues in that workplace that just bring stuff up. And the Taurus part, the home life, is sort of saying, hey, well, it's time to connect in with maybe a family member, or even space in your home that you want to set up, so you can just be in touch with your body, so you can drop into your physicality and what you've been talking about as the simplicity of Taurus, and just getting into that space. And so I was thinking about, I mean, if you are living at home with family members, it might be that you want to actually set aside time, or even a little space, a little spot on the deck or something, just for that encounter, to connect with somebody in a specific way. Or maybe it's over a meal, because that's Taurus.
Oh yeah. Too.
But that's going to help you kind of get more in touch with your physicality and embrace the pivot point that the eclipse suggests.
Yeah. Yeah. The pivot point here, the change is around your home and family. What change do you need to work to create that will bring more simplicity, stability, and beauty into your home? So that's what you're really seeking here out of this this eclipse. Okay,
Nice.
now we're going to move on to those of you with Pisces rising, and this is bringing the eclipse into your third house. So the third house is about our communications, our relationships with siblings, neighbors, some of those relationships that don't seem as important as relationships or parents, but really can be equally as important. But those relationships and how we learn and work with our communications in those relationships is really what that third house is about. So this is where the pivot point is happening. This is where change is really required, is in that area of communication.
Nice.
The intensity is coming from the area of the worldview. Well, that's, you know, your worldview is very complicated, but keep your communications steady and simple. I think that's a way to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I agree. I mean, I was thinking about how, yeah, it's really easy to get upset by other people's worldview, and where that sun placement is, it's above the horizon, it's out in public, and it's, oh man, it's just so intense how these people believe this thing or that thing, because ninth house is about beliefs. And what that moon in Taurus does is it brings it right, as you said, Lori, right to the level of simplicity, the walking out of your house and, oh, you see a neighbor, and you know, engaging with that neighbor, connecting with that neighbor, and being in your body. You know, maybe as you walk down the street and you're just connecting with your body wisdom, and you see how simple it is to connect with a neighbor, and you don't have a clue, you don't know their political beliefs. I mean, or maybe you do, but that's not really the point.
Yeah, it
The point
doesn't
is
matter.
that physical thing, right? You know, and
Right.
it's so it can be so refreshing and just relieving to be like, oh, there's, you know, we may have different worldviews, but we can connect over the simplicity of life.
Right.
And
We're
that's
both
kind of what I think.
humans, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe if you've got some chocolate chip cookies in your bag, give one to your neighbor. You know, Taurus loves food. So,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, bringing
Yeah.
that simplicity into those relationships regardless of the worldview. I love that idea with this one, with the
Yeah.
Pisces rising. That's really
Yeah.
lovely.
Very
Okay.
helpful. So, okay.
I think we
Good.
went through all 12 of them, and I'm excited about tomorrow,
Yeah.
which is the eclipse tomorrow as we're recording this. I'm excited
Yes.
to see how it plays out. I don't I shouldn't say I don't care, because clearly we all care. But I will be glad when these elections are done. And we know they probably won't be done immediately, because things are so complex in American politics and elections these days. But when the dust settles, I will be happy the dust has settled.
The simplicity of the dust settling.
Simplicity.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
thinking about simplicity and thinking about the wisdom of the body. I think those are the two most important things for us all to be focused on in this incredibly tumultuous, difficult time.
Yeah, because connecting with your body is going to help you connect with your environment and the stable ground beneath your feet. So
Yeah.
it's really important work.
Take a nap.
Yeah.
Take a walk in the woods. If you've got a partner, make sweet love as much as you can, and then take another nap. That's my advice to everybody.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Laurie.
All right. Thank you, Jennie. Talk later. Bye.
Bye.